Okay, let's get started. So today we are meeting to talk about writing outstanding law school applications, and hopefully I will give you some good tips. And it doesn't matter if you've already started writing them or you haven't started writing them. Hopefully this meeting will help you either refine or get started. And let's get started. So my name's Indrani. I've been with Leland for about a little over a year now, and I used to work at Stanford University as the Associate Director of Admissions. So I have read a million applications and essays in my time, and then I converted that experience into becoming an admissions coach. So I have helped a lot of people get into their law schools of choice, and I'm really happy to be with Leland and working with people like you. As I said, if you're just joining, we will have a lot of time for questions at the end. So please hold your questions, or you can type them in the chat and I will get to them during that time. You feel free to mute yourself, turn off your camera, whatever, it's whatever you're comfortable with. So today we are going to go over 5 kind of sections or 5 approaches that I like to focus on with my clients. And the admissions essays are pretty much, I feel, the most important aspect of your application. Everything else is basically historical. So your letters of rec are talking about interactions you've had in the past. Your transcripts and your test scores are things that happened before, but your essay is something that you can work on now and talk about anything you want. And it's really your opportunity to provide extra information that the admissions committees won't be able to gather from anything else in your application. So it's important to be thoughtful about what you write about. And I also have some tips about how to answer different prompts. So first we'll talk about, we'll look at 6 different school prompts and kind of go through what they ask for. And my approach with my clients is actually to have 2 essays that are ready to go, because you will have the opportunity to, for most schools, upload 2 essays and really give them the whole picture of your profile and who you are professionally and personally, which will help them make a decision about your admissions. Optional essays, most schools have them, and I truly believe they're optional, except for in one case, which we'll go over. And then the why essays, some schools ask for those as well, which is the why do you want to go to our school? And we'll talk about how to best answer those as well. Okay, so I gathered 6 essay prompts for the required essay, and I'm going to go through them, and then later we'll talk about how to respond to them. So Georgetown says Georgetown law does not have a minimum or maximum length for personal statement, though we recommend around 2 pages double-spaced. You can write your personal statement on any subject that will enable the admissions committee to get to know you. So this is super broad, wide open, doesn't really give you any guidance. And you'll notice that the law school application process is it's just individual. Every school does their own thing. It's completely different than undergrad, where you have the Common App and you can submit 1 essay for everywhere. But you can submit 1 essay everywhere as long as you do a few things, and we'll talk about that. NYU. This is a brief statement. Make it no more than 500 words, so that's short. It is also personal. Describe aspects of yourself, your accomplishments, or your academic and professional goals. Take a moment to reflect on these and consider including your thoughts about how they motivate you towards graduate study and/or illuminate the reasons you're applying for one of our programs or particular specialization. So this essay prompt has a professional bent. We'll go through that, but it also is pretty much asking for a why NYU within the essay. USC. The personal statement is your primary opportunity to discuss who you are beyond the application basics. We're particularly interested in how your background, academic or otherwise, has led to your decision to study law. So that sentence is a hint. This is not the place to repeat items on your resume. We'll also talk about the urge to do that. University of Chicago. The personal statement is an essential part of every application, and it's your opportunity to introduce yourself to the admissions committee. It should demonstrate your contribution to the law school community beyond academics and should demonstrate your ability to communicate your thoughts effectively. The admission committee often finds that a personal statement focusing on a unique personal attribute or experience is usually the most informative, as opposed to a restatement of your qualifications or resume. So they're asking for a more personal statement, not the professional one, which we'll go into. Fordham. While the topic of this required essay is up to you, the most successful personal statements are those that develop a sense of the applicant and their values, aspirations, and concerns. As Fordham's law school's motto is "in the service of others," we are also interested in hearing about contributions you would like to make to our student body, the legal profession, and ultimately the larger society. So this is kind of funny because on the very top it says, well, the topic is up to you. Then it kind of tells you what they're looking for. So you should definitely pay attention to that. UCLA. Discuss any matters relevant to your ability to succeed in law school and the practice of law, and any attributes, experiences, or interests that would enable you to make a distinctive contribution to UCLA law or the legal profession. Very specific. It's all about you, what your goals are, why you need a law degree, and what you want to do with it, and why UCLA is the place for you. So you can see every single one of these is nuanced, asking for different things. But if you play your cards right, you can use one essay for each one with some tweaks here and there. Okay, so the first type of essay I'd like to talk about is what I call the professional essay. No school is going to call it that. You'll notice that the schools pretty much call it a statement of purpose or a personal statement. Harvard has the statement of perspective. Everyone calls it something different, but for my purposes and this talk, I'm going to talk about the professional essay and the personal essay. So the professional essay is about your career goals and your background and why law is what you want to do. So if we look back at, so like UCLA is the perfect example of, they're asking for a professional statement. They're talking all about law, why you think you'll be a good lawyer, what you want to do with a law degree. And it's very important that you sound convicted. So when you write this essay, if you say, I'm really talented in lots of different things, I'm not really sure what I want to do with my life, but I know I want to be a lawyer, not really sure what kind of law, but I'm going to explore when I'm in law school, that is not going to work for the most part. If you think of the law, the admissions committee doing an assessment and they're like comparing you to other people, the person who is like, I've had this experience, I am interested in these people, I want to help, and this is what I want to do, and this is why I need a law degree to do it, compared to someone who's saying, I'm going to explore. The person who is convicted and is like, I know what I want to do with my life, likely will have a seat in that class over the person who's feeling, sounds a little bit wishy-washy. Don't rehash your resume. They're going to have your resume. And I've read so many essays where basically the person takes their resume and just makes it into a paragraph form. First, I went to school, then I had this job, and this is what I did at the job, and then I did this other thing. And it's really boring, but it's also a missed opportunity. If you like flesh out your resume enough that looking at the resume in itself can tell you all about all sorts of your professional experiences and maybe extracurricular and volunteerism and stuff, there's no need to go into all that nitty-gritty detail in this essay. They're going to have your resume. Instead, it makes much more sense and is much more compelling if you pick a thing or two that you did and go into great detail about those things and how they relate to your goals and how they inspired you to go to graduate school for law. So it's, if you had an internship and you met a person that you really wanted to help, or I've had people talking about pivoting their careers. So for example, one person I remember, wrote about how she was an auditor and she was having all these conversations with C-level executives with companies. She was a consultant for tax. She was giving them these hard conversations about, oh my gosh, you did all these things wrong and this is what's going to happen. And she started realizing that she would much rather be a proactive person who's going to help them not make those mistakes. And that's why she wanted to go to law school. So she went into these details about the clients that she couldn't help the way she wanted to and why she needed a law degree to help them. So the other thing that's important to remember, I read a lot of essays too where people say, I am resilient and I have good communication skills and I have this and that and the other thing. And anyone can say those things, but if you tell your story in such a way that it demonstrates that you have those attributes, it's not only much more memorable, but it's like evidence that you have these attributes that will contribute to their community and also the law, profession of law in general. Okay, so that was the professional essay. The personal essay is when I think Georgetown was wide open. So if a prompt does not say why do you want a law degree or why are you going to law school, they don't care. They know that you want a law degree because you're applying to law school. They're actually asking for more of a personal essay and your personal attributes and your soft skills and how you're going to contribute to their community. And the whole mission of this personal essay is for the adcoms to be like, I can really picture that person fitting in here. They seem like a great person. They'll be a good mentor and friend and student and contribute well to our community and our conversations and participate in different activities and really be an asset. So the way you can tell that story, it doesn't matter, believe it or not, what the topic is. And it doesn't matter if you mention law at all. And it's surprising to some people when I say this, but it's honestly not what they're looking for if they don't ask. So if they don't ask, why do you want a law degree and what do you want to do with a law degree? You can talk about anything else just as long as you kind of demonstrate and kind of implied in that essay are things like empathy, your commitment to diversity and inclusion, resilience, you're a good problem solver, you're a good communicator, you're a good friend, or whatever it is. So I encourage people to think hard about their values, what's important to them. If something like if I asked your best friend what their favorite things about you are, think about kind of characteristics, adjectives, then think of a topic that you can tell a story about that demonstrate these things. And I've had successful applicants write about cooking. I've had them write about rescuing animals. I've had them write about ballroom dance. A lot of people write about their athletics. A lot of people write about overcoming some sort of personal challenge or obstacle or a relationship they have. And it's a demonstration of how well you write, but also it brings color to the application and it brings some personality to it. And so, it's really hard to gather personality from these essays and resumes and stuff. But if you write a personal story, it's a good way to add that to your profile. So a pitfall is when people decide to talk about something like overcoming a mental health situation or a trauma. It can work, but it's really can be kind of hard. I discourage it most of the time. You really need to, if you bring up mental health issues or other kind of professional or personal things that you're overcoming, you have to come out stronger and better at the end. Otherwise, the way I look at it is the admissions committee, they're doing a risk assessment. They're basically looking at all these people and picking people they think will thrive. So if you provide information into your profile where they go, this sounds like this person's been through a lot and I worry that they might not make it here. If you don't, you can write whatever you want. So if you provide information where they start scratching their head, that is a problem and it might work not in your favor. It might actually be your demise. So be very careful when you write about things like that. If you have a coach, they might be able to help you, but for the most part, I've had very few people submit essays about stuff like that. I should say, sorry, if you have had a trauma or a mental health situation, let's say during school, and you have a semester or quarter of bad grades, then it's totally appropriate to write a very small addendum explaining what happened. Just as I said, as long as you come out like it's not an issue anymore, it's not a problem, it's handled, it won't affect you in law school. Okay, next are the optional essays. Most schools have optional essays, and I'd say most have at least one. And a lot of times, the optional essay will be an opportunity for you to upload one essay or the other when you have that professional and personal essay. That way, you'll have both there, and the adcoms will have your whole picture, which is really great. So it might be tell us something about you that we wouldn't gather any other way. And then an optional essay is now tell us something else. Or if they ask for a why essay as an optional essay, which I say here that I don't actually think why essays are optional. If they give you the opportunity to say why you love their school, you shouldn't blow that off. But if an optional essay is a why essay, another opportunity is for you to do kind of, if necessary, shorten up your professional statement, which talks about your background, your inspiration for law school. And then at the end, you can add the why law part that is tailored to the school. And then you've covered all your bases. There is the inclination. A lot of people decide, oh, well, I'm going to answer all the optionals because that'll just, give them a better idea of who I am. I disagree. Having sat behind that desk and reading file after file after file, it's very clear when someone feels like they should write an optional essay just because they can. And I disagree. If you feel forced or like you don't really know what to say, then just don't do it. It's optional for a reason. The adding a kind of half-assed essay to this is not going to do you any favors. So if you read the optional prompts and you're like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what I want to say, this is going to be great, then you should do it. But if you're kind of trying to rack your brain and scrape the bottom of the barrel of options, then I would say just let it go. And as I said, I do believe the one case where an optional essay should be required in your eyes is when it's a why school essay. Okay, why essays? You don't know how many why essays I've read where it's basically like Stanford is world-renowned faculty and amazing students and all these great opportunities and nothing is specific. You might as well not do it then. If I can swap Stanford for Harvard or UCLA or in the essay and just swap the name and it still makes sense, there's no point in writing that essay. So you really should do some research. Go beyond the admissions websites. Look at the current student website. You can look up TED Talks and see what professors are doing. Look up articles about the school. Talk to alums. One great idea is if you go onto your own alumni network on LinkedIn, you can do some research into alums that went to the school you're writing essays for and talk to them and find out some kind of insider scoop information that you might not get by just looking at the websites. You can go to the forums and mention that you met so-and-so from the admissions staff. Just get super specific, talk about classes, and you should definitely bridge what you want to do at the school, for your future with, current opportunities like maybe journals, clinics, externships, something that meets your needs in terms of furthering your own goals. And if you can't think of what to say in the why essay, you have to kind of think really hard why you're even applying, because, you should be able to say, especially if they're asking you, why do you like us? You should be able to think of something substantive. Otherwise, maybe it's not a good idea to even apply. It went really fast. Okay, so these are the prompts I had in the beginning, and I underlined the hint that I feel like um, what they're asking for. So for Georgetown, it says you can write your personal statement on any subject that will enable the admissions committee to get to know you. They don't have any indication that they care why you want a law degree. So this would be a personal statement. For NYU, I underlined how how you are motivated to graduate study, illuminate the reasons you're applying for one of our programs, a particular specialization. So this is a why essay they're asking for, but they also want to know, why you're wanting to study law. So that's a professional statement. USC, how your background, academic or otherwise, has led your decision to study law. That's a professional statement. And they even say, don't just repeat items on your resume. So they want to kind of have you expand on some experience and why you want to become a lawyer. University of Chicago is asking for a unique personal attribute or experience, and as opposed to a restatement of your qualifications or your resume. So they're asking for a personal statement. Fordham, contributions you would like to make to our student body, the legal profession, and ultimately the larger society. That's a professional statement. UCLA, very, very clearly a professional statement. Okay, so when I work with people on essays, I really encourage them to have their 2 essays being no more than 2 pages double spaced. That's because even though some schools allow for more, most have that limit, and you don't want to be scrambling to mess around with word count and trying to shorten things up. And just, even if you have up to 3 pages, it's not like they want 3 pages. They're giving you 3 pages if you have compelling stuff to say. But remember that these essays are also writing samples. So being concise and to the point is much better than fluffing it up just because you have room. So I do a lot of editing for my people where I'm really cutting back, making things tighter, taking out redundancies and fluffy words that don't really add value. Every single word in your essay should be relevant and be necessary. Don't just add fluff because you have space. The other thing I get a lot of questions about is, what is the AdCom looking for? How can I stand out? And it's a hard question, and there is no answer, because the AdComs aren't sitting down and opening up your essay and thinking, I hope they tell me something about XYZ. They're just thinking of you as a blank slate, and you can tell them whatever you want. And so the most important thing is telling your story in the most compelling way possible, adding value to your application with your writing, not regurgitating your resume, being very clear about your goals and why you want to go to law school if they ask that, or being very clear about in your personal statement, having a clear message, making sure that when they read your personal statement, that they're learning all these great things about you. And that's your goal. So there is no trying to predict what they're going to think. I get a lot of questions too about, is this too cliche or cheesy? And, or everyone writes about this X, Y, and Z. The thing that you should think about, though, is you're an individual and you're unique. And so thinking about something as cliche or cheesy is not doing you any favors. I think if you're working with a coach, that coach will help you make sure that it doesn't come off that way. But if your story is authentic and it's genuine and your goals are genuine and you feel strongly about something, just go for it and talk about it. Don't worry about the end result till it's all polished, and if you need help, you should ask for help. All right, so we have about 15 minutes for questions, and I am happy to answer whatever you got. If you have specific questions about, your own situation that might not be relevant to the group, then I would suggest that you can ping me afterwards, shoot me a note on the Leland platform and I'm happy to help. So feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, let me call on someone here. Elizabeth.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for calling on me and thank you for hosting this session tonight.
Sure.
I have a quick question. Apologies if it's a bit ignorant.
No, nothing. Don't do that.
Thank you. I shouldn't do that. It is true. Regarding the 3 pages, if someone were to have their personal statement go into 3 pages, is the expectation that it fills a full 3 pages, or does 2.5 pages suffice?
No, so the guidelines for page length are guidelines. You don't have if usually they say up to 3 pages, and I just speaking from experience, 3 pages is pretty long. So if you go over 3 pages, I think my best advice is make your essay 2 pages, and then if there's a why component they ask for, you can tack that on the bottom, and if you go into 2.5 pages, it's perfectly fine. But definitely don't worry if you don't fill up every single line.
Okay, thank you. That does answer my question. I was wondering, like, is it we should fill up every single line? Okay, thank you.
Simran?
Hi. My question was about how, if you can give an example of a personal statement that doesn't end with, this is why I want to go to law school, and also your tips for if you know, none of us have been to law school, so if we don't know the specifics of, okay, this is what I want to do with my law degree, like what do you suggest in that case?
Okay, so the first question you're asking about a professional statement that doesn't say why I want to go to law school, I think professional statements do say that. That's kind of the definition. The personal statement is the one that I say doesn't need to go into that. Am I misunderstanding?
Uh, yeah, I may have misspoken, but I wanted an example of a personal statement that is a
Yeah.
law school application essay, but that doesn't end with, okay, this is why I want to go to
Yeah,
law
so
school.
I strongly believe that if you have two essays, one is the one that says why you want to go to law school and one is the one that's personal, you are covering all your bases. The personal one can be about anything that demonstrates your values and skills. Let's see. Okay, so here's an example. I had a guy who wrote about how dancing, he was actually a competitive ballroom dancer. And he wrote about how he realized he was practicing with his partner and he kept messing up his steps. And he had this realization that he's not one of those people that's he's not in the moment. Like he was always trying to predict or like think ahead, and he wasn't actually paying attention to the rhythm or the music, and he kept messing up. And so he started being very thoughtful um and sorry, very thoughtful about his movements and his dancing and paying attention to his partner and her body language. And then he realized that just being in the moment really smoothed out his steps. But the bigger picture was when he was thinking about being in the moment, he realized that he was never really in the moment. He was always thinking of the next thing he was going to say in a conversation and missing what the person was saying who was talking. He was never, really paying attention. He was always thinking of like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. And so once he started actually practicing being in the moment for dance, he started realizing that he was becoming a better friend. When he was outside walking his dog, he was noticing the beautiful flowers and other things that he had been missing because he was always in his head. So that was kind of like a personal growth moment, and that's what he wrote about. And so what we learned about him was he's very self-aware, and now he has like more empathy, he's a better listener, all these great things that happened when he became more in the moment. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, questions here. At what point do you think the personal statement lauds your achievements and seems boastful? What do you suggest to determine this? um so I think it's interesting when people regurgitate their resume and go, and then I was promoted, and then I had this great thing happen at work, and then this happened. that almost sounds more boastful. I feel like the resume is the place to tout your accomplishments, and this would be the professional statement that's talking about your professional goals and experiences and background. If you pick 2 or 3 experiences and talk about how they inspired you to go to graduate school, it doesn't sound boasty. But I think if you do just kind of call out your accomplishments from your resume, that's when it sounds boastful. I hope that helped. When writing, the diversity statement should be serious, informal, or more laid back and conversational. Hey, it's totally up to you. I think your personality should come out. The professional statement is generally more formal. The personal statement can be funny, it can be entertaining. So I think, go with your gut and how you write. I think having your personality come out is actually a really good thing. Could you speak a little about the lived experience, background, and perspective essays that are often optional? Should it focus on a single anecdote about your identity, or should it be more expansive? Okay, so that one is a little bit more complicated. Because I recommend 2 pages double space, it's a very short essay. So it's really hard to say everything you want to say. So I would say pick 1 or 2 things. A lot of times it's a chronological story about whether you're kind of demonstrating personal growth or your aspects of yourself that will contribute to the diversity of the incoming class and the law school community. But you don't really have the space to, go on and on about a lot of different things. So it's hard. You have to pick and choose. But I think a lot of times when I'm working with people, I tell them not to write a 2-page essay the first time. I really want to see, 3 or 3.5 pages so I can get an idea of all the content that they're thinking about, and then I help them hone it down. A Canadian applicant who is only applying to schools in the US, do I need to explicitly mention why I want to go to school practice law in the US? Or is it my intent implied? Yeah, I don't think you need to use up space on that. There is an addendum. Most schools allow you to have, write a short addendum about other things that you want to contribute to your application and not use up space in your essay. So if you have a specific reason that you think would be interesting to the admissions committee as a Canadian applicant, I think that you could, I'm laughing because I see dogs in the class and no people right now. So I think you could, this is in there if you feel, I generally feel like if there's anything that you think the adcoms are going to wonder about something, then it makes sense to do an addendum, but I don't think you should write a whole essay on it. If you're trying to tell us, what happens if you do not have any legal internships or paralegal experience before applying to law school? That's totally fine. I have a lot of people that don't, but you should be able to articulate why you want to go to law school. So sometimes that inspiration is from a class you took in college. It could even be a personal experience or a family situation or something like that. Or if you are working in a non-law field, a lot of times you can explain why you want to pivot. But you should be able to articulate your inspiration. That's the most important thing. If you're trying to tell a story or recount a reflection, is there an ideal location in your personal professional statement? Should you mention why law? So that would be, okay, just to reiterate, I have my people do 2 essays. One is the professional why law, one is personal. The personal one, like the ballroom dancing one that I mentioned, didn't mention law at all. So it's 2 different things. So if you, it's hard for me to answer this question about where to put what, because I think generally the why law is at the end, but it should be built up in the story that you're telling. Like it should be pretty clear by the very end that obviously you want to go to law school for a specific reason, and then you kind of nail it with the conclusion at the end. Do you provide any support for Canadian schools too? Yes, I actually helped someone. I helped 2 people get into Canadian law schools in the last couple of years. So It's very similar. I haven't really seen a big difference between, so my last guy, he got into University of Toronto and also NYU, and the applications were very similar. So, what to put on your resume if you aren't working due to leaving the military with severe okay. I'm happy to help you with that. I think you just put in your resume whatever, if there's a gap, there's a gap, and then might do an addendum about the resume gap. That would be my recommendation. I know you said sometimes it's not good to restate what's on the resume, but is it okay if I do mention specific aspects of? Yeah, of course. Yeah. I didn't mean you shouldn't mention anything on the resume. What I meant was, I have seen a lot of essays that are literally like first paragraph is what they did at their first job, and then they did another job, and then they did another job. And that is the thing that's regurgitating the resume. It's kind of going chronologically in order and just explaining what they did in each job that basically you could see in the resume. But if you pick out certain aspects of your jobs that relate to your inspiration to going to law school, that's what you need to do. What is not okay to put in a diversity statement? That's an interesting question. I think, especially when a diversity statement is optional, I do have people that we talk it through and decide that maybe it doesn't make sense to write one. But I think in the diversity statement, I mentioned earlier that if there is kind of some sort of trauma or mental health issues, I try and steer away from really focusing on that, because you want to really bring a positive. I mean, I understand that a lot of people have that, and I feel it, and I have a lot of empathy, but focusing a whole essay on it doesn't always work. So, but it's hard to answer what not to put in a diversity statement. I think I would love to talk to you about what you're thinking about so that we can work through it. If you want to send me a message after this class, because it's hard for me, like, not knowing what you're kind of thinking to address. Like, it's like too broad a question. I've often heard not to include pre-college experiences in your law school essays. If this is true and a significant part of one's journey happened early in life, how do you recommend drafting? So yeah, focusing on an experience that happened before high school or even in high school is not, it's not effective. However, I've had a lot of people introduce a childhood experience just like in a first brief paragraph to kind of like start the introduction, and then but most of the essay should be more current, but definitely bring it in if it's an important aspect of your story. How specific would you recommend referencing a friend's inspiration? I have a friend who is a county judge, and she has a mission statement for her specialty: court redemption through accountability. Is it too specific to include? No, I don't think so. I mean, if that's your inspiration, I think that's perfectly fine to talk about, for sure. Can you discuss how to write a compelling diversity statement? Diversity statements it can be, a lot of times the personal statement can also act as the diversity statement. And right now, especially after the Supreme Court ruling about affirmative action, almost anything can be considered diversity. It can be a diversity of experience that you can contribute to conversations. I've had people write diversity statements about, being open-minded and empathic, and so it's again, it's basically your goal is to talk about how your unique lived experiences can help contribute to conversations, discussions, etc., at the campus and the law school community. It doesn't have to be just about ethnicity or, under resourced or that kind of thing. It really can be anything now. So everyone has the opportunity to write a diversity statement. You mentioned to show, not tell. would it ever be meaningful to explicitly describe skills learned through so I think I don't like it. I don't like it when I say through this experience I learned how to blah 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 blah. It anyone can say that, I think. I think it's much more effective to tell the story in such a way that I just get it. Like, oh wow, this person has all those things instead of listing them. If someone had cancer, would you suggest something else? Oh, I mean, I've had people talk about overcoming an illness or an injury in their personal statement. I think there's the hard part about this is there's no right or wrong answer. It's all about how you do it. And I think it can be an effective essay, but it just has to be, it can definitely show if you talk about overcoming an illness or injury, that kind of thing, it can be you can do it the right way and the wrong way. I think the right way is not focusing on the negative, but really focusing on your resilience and overcoming the challenge, and talking about how you're stronger now than you were before. Even though I'm applying from Canada, should I have all my essays done in American spelling? It doesn't matter. If you don't write in American spelling, I would just do it in the Canada way. All right. Any other questions? We have a couple more minutes. If you're laid off from your job, which led to learnings, can I mention it in my personal essay or the addendum? Depends. I know that answer is probably not what you want to hear, but it probably depends. If you were laid off for cause, I would caution you to talk about it too much. But if you were laid off because there was layoffs and you learned something from it, sure, I think that could work. I know you mentioned not to write too much about trauma and mental health with my husband being a victim of a homicide. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I mean, sure. I think when I was talking about trauma and mental health is, I mean, God, I'm so sorry. That's horrible. Yeah, I think you if that's your inspiration, you should write about it. I think when I was talking about personal statements and mental health, I've had people talking about their struggles, and it was all about their struggles and not about, and kind of talking about their struggles and how hard school was and how hard taking tests are and that kind of thing. And that kind of story is just going to instill risk into your application. But if you feel comfortable talking about that situation, absolutely. And I'm so sorry. Do the admissions committee typically value anecdote-based essays over essays that show overview of childhood, professional life, and development of passion for law? It all depends on the prompt and the context. I think a strong essay can be about anything, but just make sure you're addressing the prompt. And from my personal experience, the anecdote ones and the ones where you're talking about lived experiences as opposed to transactions, the stories are much more compelling. So I guess we're out of time, but I would love to hear from you if you have further questions. Emma put the link to my my profile. You can write me a note and I'll be happy to answer it. And also, if you enjoyed this talk and found it was helpful, I would love it if you would give me a review. All right, everyone, have a good night.